When we see child with some behavioral issues, challenging behaviors, and we do data collection, teachers, you ask a teacher, and the teacher can just list all those behaviors, what kind of behaviors they have, and teacher may not know details about the child themselves, what kind of some deficiency. If a child does not have disabilities, already have a label, and then teacher said, oh yeah, he has a learning disabilities, but very in detail, so teacher may not know what exact, disability child has. So when they see the children and they have a disability, behavioral issues, and then teacher believe, they know the child. However, most of the times they know about child behavior issues, what challenging them, right? So when we see, children's behaviors, and then we do data collections. So we have a baseline data and data, what kind of, and then those data collections are most of the times only focused on the behavior. So when we collect only behavior, even the functional behavior assessment is said the function, however, this functional behavior assessment is not available in general education classroom. So when you do as a teacher, you have a child with a very difficult to handle child, with very challenging behaviors. And then you do data collection. As a teacher, you can do that. Okay, so those data collection, usually we go by, frequencies, percentages, how many times it happens, and then how long it happens. Those are, quantitative data. And then we see intensity magnitude. So intensity magnitude is a qualitative data. So we don't have those like a ruler-based measurement, right? It's not clear, explicit method we could use. However, magnitude, intensity, and then we see the, how it impact those behavior impact, around, and then impact the child and then other people in the classroom. So we do those data collections. So you do data collections, and then yes, you can, focus on the child and the behaviors, and then you see first it is a disruptive behavior, interruptive behavior, distractible behavior. Usually these behaviors they occurs during the instructional time. So during the instructional time means the teacher is on the stage and talk, and then you have audiences. There's students, right? So you want a student to just fully attentive to your speaking, your teaching. However, child does something, right? They just play with their pencils or break pencils, or throw things, or just get out of their seats and walk around and touch, classroom items, or touch their peers, make their peers just yell at them. And those are all disruptive behavior during, on task time. Child does off task things. So that's a disruptive behaviors. And then some children do disruptive behaviors. Disruptive behavior has two things. So they disrupt others. So of course, while they are disrupting others, they disrupt their own learning as well, right? They are out of their seats. And then of course, they do something and the other children can be interrupted and disruptive by the child behaviors. However, the child is still, also off task, so they interrupt their own learning. And then second one is, I named this passive off task. So there are off tasking, they have off task behaviors. However, it does not impact other students. They only just by themselves. It's a daydream, it is off task, right? And then sleep is off task. However, it's okay. Nobody bothers. It's only they stop their own work. They interrupt their own work. So they are not learning during that time. And then they do all kinds of fidgets. So they just picking the, fingers and play with the fingers, play with just pencils, running the pencils, or they just scribble on the desk. Those are all off task. So I said disruptive behavior. However, this one is a passive off task. So they are off from the task. However, they don't, disrupt other people. Although sometimes they just a little tapping, you know, like a tapping pencils, but not loud. Loud is disruptive. However, they just a little tapping, and then their neighbor may just look at them, glance at them. However, they just right away just you know, their attention goes back to their teacher, and then that little bit. And third one is non-compliance and defiance. So I don't have to explain this, what non-compliance and defiance, right? And then next one is aggressive and violent behavior. This aggressive and violent behavior is a very intensive behavior because it is hurting other people. This aggressive violence is not hurting themselves, it's about the hurting others. And then very just, you know, bullies, of course. However, inside, I'm just talking about the inside the classroom during the instructional time and with the teacher. It's not just, you know, off the scene and behind the background, you know, they do outside the schools. I'm not talking about that. So their aggressive one is mostly many times it toward their teachers, because it is aggressive and violent behavior. It could be more compensating behavior. So they are not, you know, it's a hurt to their pride and their dignity. It's all related to their academics. And then during the, you know, those disruptive behavior time, they disrupt, interrupt, and then teacher is not that nice voice because the teacher is busy with the teaching, and then child is just walking around. Of course, the teacher just say, "Hey, John, could you go back to your seat?" Voice, because the teacher is busy, and it's you know, there is no teacher will say in the middle of teaching, and "Hi, John, could you go back?" No teacher will do that because they're intense in teaching, and they're, you know, mind cognitively is just overloaded, right? So just very direct way, and they tell them just go back to, you know, work. And if it's a child, it all depends on child personality. If a child is very extroverted and very prideful and very bold, and then those children's reaction is not that nice, especially when teacher says, just go back to your seat. However, if you keep doing that, and then I'm gonna move your token, so you move your chart, that is a threat. So it's like more like a habitual and routine based. So teachers, you know, they walk around, the teacher says this, and then child just, you know, right away just hit back to the teacher with their words, right? So mostly, especially these are compensating behavior after their disruptive behavior, and the teacher said the 1 time and 2 time, and this is the first warning, this is the second warning, this is the third warning, and then just child just feels very like, you know, challenged, and then they, you know, respond in this way. However, next one, you know, if this aggressive violent behavior is just shown as just, you know, as a first behavior, not just a scaled up behavior, and then first behavior, it could be a little bit different. If a child is, if it's not compensating behavior, it is the behavior toward their adults, and then child distrust involved. So it's like a trusting. And not only this particular teacher, it could be any adult a child has. I'm going to explain this one a little bit later. And then, so we said the disruptive behavior, off task, you know, off task behavior, but this is quiet, not that loud behavior. And then non-compliance, you know, defiance behavior, and then aggressive, violent behavior. And then fifth one is a similar, it's a loud, you know, a little bit aggressive, violent. However, it's not aggressive but violent. It is, however, is to themselves, not to others. So it's like a child show extreme, you know, emotional outbursts, and then tantrums, and physically, and then voice, and those, and child could not hold. So it's like emotional impairment. The child may have those disabilities, or child may have some, you know, oversensitivity issues, very oversensitive, and then they overbooked, overloaded, they feel very panic, and then they could show this. So it could be related to their disability. So disability stemmed behavior, it could be like that. So that's the fifth one. And then last one is atypical behavior. That is definitely the children with a disability could show. So it's like more like a social lack of a social sense and people skills and social comprehension. And so they show those, even, self-stimulatory, those steaming and just scripting, those kind of behavior as well. And then those, indifference in people. So people talk to them and they don't respond. And those are all just the last one. So I just went to buy just like a triangle. So it's like a highest one, the most percentage, highest prevalence is a disruptive behavior, and then second one is that passive off-task behavior, and the third one is a non-compliance defiance, and then aggressive violent one. And then, self-aggression, like a self-harms and emotional outburst, and it could be related, part of their behaviors. It could be just themselves have a it's a maturity related to. And then last one is, those are definitely just atypical behavior. So these are all behavior focused, categorization. So all behaviors, so what form of a behavior, that's a topography, what form of a behavior they display. So it does not tell much. It just only talk about the behavior itself, right? Like we say eating behavior, swimming behavior, walking behavior, like that. It does not tell much. And then you have those behavior lists, that means you don't know what to do because, it doesn't tell much. That's this behavior focused one. It's easily, we could say the child displays this kind of behaviors. We could say, however, behavior management, behavior shaping wide, it doesn't help. So for the behavior shaping wide, so I call it a diagnostic behavior shaping procedures. So I don't use management, I say shaping. So it's like a very gradually. So it's not management. Shaping means we teach them behavior. So gradually, procedurally, we shape and then we transform this behavior to this behavior, like in a toddler walk, very, very slowly. So we use chaining and shaping. That is my focus. So for that, for the behavior shaping purpose, so we need to know why this behavior, what happens. So that's what we need. First, those why, first one, the child personality, child personality trait, child person human characteristics, and then child may have some disabilities, and child background, home environment, their nurturing environment, and child may have a certain, unknown something. So it's all involved. So it's like, especially child themselves, it's like a maturity is very important, right? Cognitive maturity. So I call it a cognitive maturity. It's a self-control and self-management. Like emotional regulation, it's a self-regulation, right? So they can control themselves, so they can regulate themselves, even though they want to just walk around, and they're cognitively, they know it's not time to walk or time to sit down and look at the teacher. So they cognitively understand and control their body, right? And then they feel bad, felt offensive, or somebody said something, and then they feel bad. However, instead of yell at them right away, they just like, I don't feel good about that, and I don't agree with that. However, they just calm down, and then just very nice, quiet voice, they may say, that really not nice to say that. They could say that, or they just hold it inside themselves. And those, at the moment, they don't just shout out right away, just, express right away. So those are all self-control and self-regulation, right? So a lot of behavior is maturity related. So age appropriate maturity, that is a nurturing environment related too, right? So those are the very important part. And then second is their cognitive developmental. So developmental domain wide, they have any kind of cognitive deficiencies. So especially attention. Many teachers believe attention is like a more behavioral matters. However, attention could be disorder and deficiencies and disabilities. So especially you see the children with autism, and when they just have auditory information, somebody called their name and they don't respond right away. It's not they just like rude and don't respond or just don't care. It's not that. It just doesn't come and register. So at the moment when they just those auditory inputs comes to their ears, and then at the moment their attention has to be activated. So activated at the moment, that's a sensitivity. So attention and sensitivity goes together, right? And then they could just recognize somebody called my name and then they respond. So it's not just a process. It's just a hear and then hit and then just gone. Because sensory memory is just like a few seconds. So that means it doesn't go to, go to the processing system, mental processing and cognitive processing, information processing, we call all that, and then they don't respond. So many children could have attention deficits. So it's like inattention or just a hyper attention and impulsive attention, or just attention itself, it just sleeps. If attention sleeps and then, it's not activating at the right moment, and then they don't recognize that. So they have undersensitivity. That's, what autism children, it just shows a lot of children just no interaction with the world outside, external world. And then oversensitivity. Also, many children shows oversensitivity, right? They oversensitive to the light and sun and just color and many different types of oversensitivity children have, and then they could show those emotional outbursts. So those disabilities they could have. A cognitive deficit is very various. It impacts their academic learning. So many times academic learning, it looks like academic learning itself is a learning behavior. So we have academic behaviors. However, if they have a cognitive deficits, deficiencies, and then it directly related to academic learning. So like a dyslexia, right? It's a learning disability because, visual perception, visual attention, especially their visual attention is their eyesight is pretty good. However, they don't see the detail of those, lines and colors, and just, they could not just do, visual tracking, visual tracing, and visual acuity and focus, and very hard. And then they could not learn, through phonics because they don't see those lines. And the whole world is the same, very hard because those are very detailed lines there, right? Very small and detailed lines. And for these children, it's very hard. So it's like, their visual attention is critical, especially for the, early literacy and oral learning. So those are critical, cognitive deficits related to academic learning. And then obviously they have those, and then their academics are very behind. So think about that whole, let's say about 7 hours the children stay in school, and then they go to lunch and recess and go extracurriculars. So about, let's say about 5 hours they stay with the teacher. Those 5 hours, most of the teacher does is teaching academics, right? They work on academics, they work on learning. So children have these disabilities, they could not learn, especially many behaviors, especially these disruptive behaviors happening during the instructional time. That means a child, over 90% of children may not have instructional level of academic skills. So I'm saying it's a grade level. However, just right now, the teachers are teaching, whatever, instructional level the teacher use, adopt, and then that is children is not that level. That means they are not learning. And then you cannot understand what teacher is teaching. And then, learning is those hours are very, very boring. The children cannot stand any boring moment. So what do? They amuse themselves. So that's all disruptive behavior. And then teacher, just like how teacher react or just act based on that. And then second behavior and third behavior, just like other behaviors could happen. This is a child-focused behavior. Child-focused behavior analysis, and then we gotta understand this child-focused reasons. So we see child, not the behavior. So these categories, like, basically I talked about child themselves, right? And then their academic deficiencies, cognitive deficiencies, and then their academic deficiencies, and then their maturity-wide, and then their disability-stemmed behaviors, right? So if we categorize based on that, so like a child have these behaviors, however, which behavior related to their academic delays, academic deficiencies, and then we categorize those behavior. And then next one, which one is a cognitive related behavior, cognitive deficiencies? Which one is a maturity related? So maturity related means a child's academic is fine. Only child just like raised as a baby, or just by permissible parents and protective parents, and then child just acts like that, like everything is just like I'm prince and princess, that kind of attitude the child shows. So anything teacher does not listen, and then they just show tantrums and like that. So which one do you think is more promising? It's a behavior itself. It's no matter how much we categorize, it doesn't give you any information. However, this child-related one, it means you have to do many screening and assessment and evaluation. Okay, so every teacher, most of teacher preparation programs, they have an assessment class. This is why teacher pre-service teachers learning assessment class. They have to do this, cognitive wide. It is very details. However, you just, my class, I give all those items. Students go out and then they observe my pre-service teachers. So they observe and then they know exactly what kind of items are child-related items. They see those references. And then they have those disability-wide, cognitive-wide attention to what kind of items they have to look into to understand the child has those difficulties. And then later they can do, behavior analysis. So we do not focus on only one most significant behavior. We focus on every single behavior, so you have to write down. And then later, these behaviors you will categorize based on this child and their condition and circumstance and what their just difficulties they have. Based on that, you have 5 different rank. So we do rank analysis. So it's the number 1 is like a learned behavior, and then number 2 is more like intentional and purposeful behavior. So that means that this behavior is a child knows they are displaying these behaviors. And then third one is a habitual behavior and disruptive, those behavior categories. Then fourth one is compensating behavior. Fifth one is the disability related behaviors. So 5, categories. So you're gonna, you have 5 categories, and then you're gonna categorize each behavior. Okay, this behavior goes here. This behavior is a disability related, go here. This behavior is like academic deficiency related behavior. So they gonna do those categorization, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you color. So some behavior is overlapped. It could be learned behavior, it could be intentional behavior. And then certain behavior, this is kind of, compensating behavior. Somehow it's like a disability related behavior. So you do that, and then you're gonna combine all those scores, and then you will just make a top to bottom. It's like a most lightest behavior to the most significant behavior. And then we're gonna start this behavior shaping. So today I said, when you do see behaviors, let's say you have 10 behaviors, one child has 10 different types of behaviors, and then mostly we just routinely, we just do it like, oh, this is a disruptive behavior, this is aggressive behavior, this is this non-compliance. I said, yes, those category is nice because we know what kind of behavior they have. However, it does not help their behavior shaping, behavior management shaping. So we gotta know these all precursory factors. What kind of precursors they have, a prerequisite skills so they need, but they are missing that. And then it's related to those behaviors. So when children have these deficiencies, of course, they cannot perform and participate, in the school activities. So again, one of children's most significant characteristics, they cannot stand the empty, minutes. Vacant minutes. They cannot stand any kind of boredom. It's a boring moment. It's really, really difficult for them. And then no child will just sit quiet like, a doll, not moving. And anytime they just have no entertainment, and then they just get up from their seats and move around. And then those maturity related behavior, you have to work on those maturity, or those behavior would not go, until the child has academic deficiencies. Until that deficiency is remediated, the child has instructional level of academic skills, so it will continue because they can't stand those boredoms. And so one of things, so we're going to talk about this behavior management part, how teacher work, those shaping wide. It is a very, very long, and then my chapter has almost 80 pages. So it's a lot. So I have to share with one by one which one goes how. However, today I just talked about the two behavior category method. So one is a behavior focused one, and the other one is a child focused one, and then child deficiency focused one. So this is a behavior management wide, shaping wide. We use this child focused one. This behavior topography and magnitude types of behavior categorization doesn't give you much information as a teacher. So that is what I shared today. Okay.